Good morning, students, and welcome back. Just a small instruction to be given before I begin the chapter. Along with this video, I have also sent the answer key for last Monday's English practice test that was held. You may go through it and check your whatever answers you've written so that you will know exactly how well you have fared. In case you need to ask some questions or clarify your doubts on the answer key, you may do so on my WhatsApp. So let us begin class the chapter. But before I begin, I want to introduce to you a very well-known person. I'm sure you know this young man, Mark Zuckerberg, a very well-known figure in social media, I should say. At a very young age, he went on to launch what all of you are into, that is Facebook. At a young age, when he was in the hostel, he felt the need to keep in touch with his friends and he was finding it a little difficult. So he used his own intuition, his own knowledge, and he started when he was in the hostel what he called it as face watch. And this face watch went on become so popular that it went on to be called later on as Facebook, and it spread like wildfire. And by the age he was 23, he went on to become the world's youngest billionaire through this social media called Facebook. I want to show you another young man. Do you know him? Probably now, yes. He's Steve Jobs' class. Steve Jobs, through at a young age, he too went on to become very rich. At the age of 20, only 20, he started the Apple company. We all know Apple company, very famous for its computers and for its new tech mobile phones. But at the same time, Steve Jobs, in the chapter that we are going to do, tells us it was not easy to reach this pinnacle of life. Although he went on to become very rich and successful at the age of 20, he had to go through a lot of downfall, ups and downs in his life. And he says that helped him to become more successful and more courageous. He goes on to narrate three stories out here in this chapter. The three stories in his life which made a very great impact, and probably it may make a great impact on you too when you come to know about it. So, we begin the chapter called Connecting the Dots. Before we begin, let us understand the meaning of this title. Class, when we were very small, probably in the pre primary as well as in the primary, we had a drawing book which had all dots in it with numbers 1, 2, 3, and the numbers had dots. And our teacher used to tell us, now you, according to the numbers, you connect those dots. And it was fun doing it. We used to do that, all of us did that. And at the end of it, by the time we finished connecting all the dots, those dots gave rise to a beautiful image. Either they were it was a bird maybe, or an animal maybe, or some human figure, or probably some article, something like that. And finally our teacher told us, now you take whichever color you like and you color it beautifully. And when we finished that painting, that drawing of connecting the dots, it made us so happy. What happened was we connected the dots and the dots gave rise to an image. Similarly, Steve Jobs, through this simple example, goes on to tell us that when we connect the dots in our life, what are these dots? These dots are the experiences, the people that come in our life, the ups and downs that come in our life, the failures in our life, the successes in our life. When we connect all of them in the right manner, or when nature connects them accordingly. Or sometimes we do not realize why these things are happening and they get automatically connected. Somewhere, all these things go on to paint a beautiful picture in our life if we become aware of those connected dots in our life. So, this is what this chapter is going to tell us. So, let us begin now the chapter class. Today, I want to tell you three stories from my life. That's it. Just three stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop in for another 18 months before I really quit. Looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. So the first paragraph goes on to tell you, it tells us that Steve Jobs went to Reed's College, which is in America. In 1972, he joined this college class. And he was not very interested in what was happening in the college. He says after the first 6 months, he did not feel like going to college. So he dropped out after 6 months and he felt it was useless going to college. Many a times we take up certain subjects or we learn certain subjects which may not interest us, and we feel, why am I studying this subject? Or why am I doing this? It's a waste of time. But later on, once again, after a few months, he rejoined Reed's College. Probably his parents must have made him understand that you have to study further to become successful. So he rejoined the college for another 18 months only. And finally, he decided now it's enough, I need to quit, because he was not interested at all. But he says this dropping in and dropping out made him learn a lot of things, because he says he went on to attend those classes which only interested him, and those which did not, he did not go to attend. Of course, today, if I think of it, if I have to give someone an advice, I will say, no, that is wrong. You have to attend all the lectures because everything is important. But according to Steve Jobs, at that time, according to his circumstances, he felt he was unnecessarily wasting time and therefore he quit. And later on in life, he says probably he made the best decision. Otherwise, he would have wasted his entire time studying something which he was not interested. So he finally dropped out of Reed's College. In this paragraph class, mark the first line. Today I want to tell you three stories from my life. Pick out the infinitive. Your answer is to tell. To is a preposition, tell is a verb. So preposition plus a verb means an infinitive. Okay, let us continue class. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with, and I would walk 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Second paragraph tells us after dropping out of college class, he came to India in 1974. Now you know India is a land which has a lot of religions. People come in search of spirituality out over here. You have many foreigners who come here. And Hare Krishna Hare Rama temple is one particular place where many foreigners you find, because they love the dance, they love the music that goes along with the press. So he too came down here to India, but he came down in search of Buddhism. And he went on to stay with his friend because he couldn't afford a dormitory room. Dormitory room is where you have all the beds laid together. Okay, so he couldn't even afford that, so he was staying with his friend and he would sleep on the floor. And he would return empty Coke's bottle. Out of that money, he used to buy food for himself. So, a very tough life after leaving college. And on Sundays, he used to walk 7 miles just to get one meal, good meal from the Hare Krishna temple. And he enjoyed it. And he says he was that curiosity of knowing what happened in India, what was happening in India, that intuition that let me learn something different, he says went on to become very priceless. He says these all things helped him later on in life. Here's one example. Now he's giving us one example why he says these experiences of dropping out of college, coming to India helped him. Reed's College offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country because I had to take a calligraphy class. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about what makes great typography great. So he goes back and he tells us that what the very few years, that is hardly around maybe 2 years or so, he studied in Reed's College. He says, but whatever he learned out there came out to be proved to be very useful because he says one of the classes or the courses that he was forced to take in college was calligraphy. I'm sure you all know calligraphy. Many of you must be even knowing how to go about it. You are using calligraphy. It's a one kind of fine art of writing. Okay, and he says this calligraphy helped him later on when he went on to invent the first computer. The typography, that is, they have mentioned the typography is arranging the printed characters. And he's talking here of serif and sans serif type. These are all different type of fonts class. I will show it to you in the form of a picture after this explanation. So he says he's very much indebted to Reed's College because he says if not for that forcible course, probably he wouldn't have learned what is calligraphy and he wouldn't have been able to imbibe that when he went on to invent the computers. Over here, mark class in this paragraph. I didn't have a dorm room. Remove the negative. Your answer is I failed to have a dorm room. Third line, you have the word food. Change it into a verb form. Answer is feed. Next line after that, you have a shorter sentence out there. I loved it. Change it into negative. Your answer is I did not hate it. Next, you mark Reed College offered perhaps the best calligraphy instructions in the country. Change it into the comparative degree. Your answer is Reed College offered perhaps a better calligraphy instruction than any other college in the country. All right, let's move further, class. 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me and we designed it all into the Mac. If I had never dropped in on that course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or, for that matter, even proportionally spaced fonts. So he says, he's very thankful to Reed's College for forcing him to do calligraphy because he says 10 years later, when he went on to assemble, or when he went on to invent the first computer called the Macintosh computer along with his friend. He says it was this calligraphy which helped him because he went on to put forward the different fonts, the spacing that was required, the the designing that was required. It was calligraphy which helped him. So what he thought was a setback in the college actually helped him later on in life. 10 years later, class. Okay, let us continue. And since Windows just copied Mac, it's likely no personal computer would have them, of course. It was impossible to connect the dots. Looking forward, when I was in college, but it was very clear looking backwards 10 years later. So it's a later on when Windows went on to improvise this Macintosh computer. I hope we all know what is Windows. I mean, Windows is a famous Microsoft company. When they took over the Macintosh computer, he says that's when, and he went on to become a billionaire then. He said that's when he realized that it was all these dots of his life, what he went through as a youngster, which helped on to become successful. So he says today, when he looks back at those 10 years that went by, he says he's really grateful to Reed's College for it. Over here, mark class. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward. Change it to negative. Your answer is, of course, it was not possible to connect the dots looking forward. Let's do the last paragraph now. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in some things, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down and it has made all the difference in my life. So, Steve Jobs ends his first story of connecting dots and he says that these connecting dots wouldn't have helped him if he would have thought of the future. Rather, it says his future went on to become successful because of his past. So, his past helped him in the present, and by connecting the past and the present, his future became successful. So he says in life you have to learn to trust a lot of things. One, he says, is gut. Gut is your inner strength. Many a times people may tell you not to do many things in life, but somewhere inside you, your inner gut feeling tells you take a risk. Probably that will bring about success. It's very few people who go on to take it because not necessarily this can prove to become successful always. A lot depends on destiny, luck. There are people who are nothing but went on to become everything. So, destiny also plays a big role. Life, the ups and downs that come in our life. If you learn to move forward, this will help you. But if you learn to stick back and cry upon it, you turn to be a failure. Karma. Karma is what you do, it comes back to you. So, karma tells us always do good, so even the good comes back to you. Be positive, the positive comes back to you. So, this is what he says. This approach in life did not leave him, and that made all the difference in his life. And that is exactly what it should be, even in our life class. All these things should also make a difference in our life. Whatever age we belong to, whatever space or time we are in, whatever we are facing, this is what we got to remember what Steve Jobs says. Connecting dots is important. Class, we have done no we did the different fonts. It said serif and sans. So this is what I wanted to show you through the picture. Sans means the simple form of the alphabet. So it's shown here, F is shown, A is shown in a small alphabet as large, the simple ones. The moment I add, maybe I extend the line, or I there is a thinning of the A on one side, or there is a little cursive way being given to the small alphabet A, which is shown in the black patch. All this is called in computer language as serif. So these are the different fonts which I am sure you know it. When you go to type and you apply the different fonts, you come across it. So it's also called as typography. So this is your serif and sans. This is the Macintosh computer class that was invented by Steve Jobs and his friend, and taken over by, and that's when they started the first Apple company. So this is how class at a young age, Steve Jobs went on to become very successful. But of course, down the line, in the later on, you will come to know in the chapter that this success did not remain with him forever. He did go through a lot of setbacks, but he did not give up in life. And that is the message that Steve Jobs gives us even in the first story. So, class, I end up my this session out here. Once again, a reminder, go through the answer key because it will help you to understand how far you have attempted your English paper. And I have also explained to you why the marks are given so and for what. Okay, except for the composition section, I have not done. If you, it is the same pattern as we did in the standard ninth. But in case you still need to know or you want to ask me, you can get in touch with me on my WhatsApp. So thank you, class. God bless you. Have a nice day.